like to call this November 18th meeting of the Forest Hill School Board to order. Roll call.
Mrs. Bissinger?
Here.
Mr. Fruman?
Here.
Mrs. Huebner?
Here.
Mr. Smith?
Here.
Dr. Heiss?
Here. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, I'd like to thank everyone for coming. As many of you know, we do have 4 emergency exits here. We have 3 off to your right and 1 up here off to my right. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Tepfer?
Mrs. Bissinger?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Fruman?
Yes.
Mrs. Huebner?
Yes.
Dr. Heiss?
Yes. Next up, minutes, 3.1, approval minutes of the Policy Committee meeting from October 21st.
Move the minutes be approved.
Second.
Mr. Tepfer?
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissinger?
Yes.
Mr. Fruman?
Yes.
Mrs. Huebner?
Yes.
Dr. Heiss?
Yes. Now the minutes from our last regular meeting on October 28th.
Move they be approved.
Second.
Mr. Tepfer?
Mr. Fruman?
Yes.
Mrs. Huebner?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissinger?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Dr. Heiss?
Yes. Moving right along, up to correspondence.
Yes, Dr. Heiss, I have one major piece of correspondence I'd like to share with the board this evening. Just this afternoon, we were notified by the Ohio OFCC, Ohio Facilities Commission, that our reports of our buildings are complete. They were waiting on an environmental report for each of our buildings, but they've decided to postpone that particular part of the report until maybe later on. But with that said, the only thing that's still remaining is an executive summary from the OFCC, and they will be calling to set up a meeting time that they can get together with us to talk about that. But what I'd like to do is to go ahead and in those reports, we got the reports from 9 of our individual buildings, and of those 9 individual buildings, each of those reports was about 55 to 60 pages long. But in those reports, there was actually a building summary. And what I'd like to do, beginning probably as early as tomorrow or as quickly as
We
possible.
actually made copies.
Oh, you made those
These down.
copies. Oh, thank you, Rick.
We just dropped one or two.
Right on top of that, thank you. But I would like to, as early as tomorrow, to place those reports as to begin the reporting to our community regarding our facilities. And then once that executive summary comes back, we can also apply that to our website as well. Okay?
Sounds great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any correspondence from the treasurer? All right. Procedure for public commentary. These meetings are not public meetings, but meetings held in public. We do welcome your comments. If you would like to address the board, we have green cards up front. Feel free to fill one out, and we'll call you when the time comes. And now's the time. You don't even have to fill out a card. All right, we're moving on. District updates from the superintendent.
Yes, I have a few I'd like to share with the board and our community and our audience this evening. First of all, I'd like to share with the board that we have completed our ALICE training with all of our staff and all of our administrators, as well as our classified staff. And at this point, we are in the process of introducing ALICE, which is the safety program, to our students. And so in the next several days, especially at the middle and the high school level, we will be presenting that information, and we'll begin doing some drills probably later on, either in December or early January, when it comes to the ALICE training. And I'd just like to thank everybody that was involved in that, from the safety committee that Julie's a huge part of, all the way through all of our training in all of our buildings, and the staff that made that possible. We had staff training from Hamilton County Sheriff's Department, our fire and safety officials, as well as the sheriffs and trainers from Brown County were here to help us as well. So I'm very excited to get that in place. It just gives our teachers and our students options when it comes to different types of looking at safety in our district, especially intruders in our buildings. Thank you. Now, also, other updates I'd like to share. We are moving into conference times, especially at the elementary level, so elementary parents will be receiving information from each of their buildings for conferences. This is also the time when we're beginning to look at a lot of different concerts across the district with the holidays coming up here in not so distant future. So we'll be having a lot of those. So I would suggest that our community as well as the board take a look at what we have posted on the website in regards to all the activities that are going on. And then I most particularly would like to congratulate both Anderson and Turpin High Schools as being named to the AP National Honor Roll, which is more than just national because it's not just the United States but Canadian schools who made the honor roll for their achievement in AP. There were only 477 schools across the country and in Canada that were named to that, and both Anderson and Turpin from Forest Hills were named to that, which is simply maintaining the number of students and increasing the number of students across our district that are continuing to achieve high marks on the AP tests. So congratulations to both Anderson and Turpin High Schools staff and students for that. So thank you.
Okay, that was great. Next up, Policy Committee report.
I have a report. The Board Policy Committee is composed of myself, Mrs. Bissinger, Dr. Jackson, and Mrs. Carnahan, and it is ably facilitated by Mrs. Monk. The Board Policy Committee met October 21st and reviewed 25 existing policies and 4 new policies recommended by Neola, our policy advisor. The revised and new policies were presented as a first reading at the October 28th Board of Education meeting and will be acted on in Section 9.1 of this meeting. Virtually all the changes or new policies are recommended based on state or federal legislation requirements. The Policy Committee recommends the approval of the recommended changes and new policies. The Board Policy Committee also met on Friday, November 15th, and reviewed our current intra-district transfer policy. The committee agreed to meet again December 3rd. We expect to make a recommendation to the Board of Education after that meeting. Thank you.
Thanks. Next up, subject 7.2, our budget hearing organizational meeting. Which we need to, statutory requirements of an organizational meeting in the first 15 days of January, and our regular meeting schedule, which needs to be once every 2 months. We do it once a month. Our date of our budget hearing / organizational meeting is January 6, 2014. Can I get a motion to approve the organizational meeting?
Okay.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Tepfer.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissinger?
Yes.
Mr. Fruman?
Yes.
Mrs. Huebner?
Yes.
Dr. Heiss?
Yes. Next up, 7.3, the superintendent's contract. We have a motion to, can I get a motion to approve the superintendent's contract?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Mr. Tepfer?
Mr. Fruman?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissinger?
Yes.
Mrs. Huebner?
Yes.
Dr. Heiss?
Yes. Next up, treasurer's contract.
Move to approve the treasurer's contract.
Second.
Randy can take it.
Mr. Tepfer?
Mr. Fruman?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissinger?
Yes.
Mrs. Huebner?
Yes.
Dr. Heiss?
Yes. Next up, board discussion items. Any topics for board discussion tonight? Hearing none?
I suppose the
Hearing
only
one?
thing, we've got the reports from the Office of Facilities, OFCC.
OFCC. Okay.
Yeah, once we all get a chance to digest this, we need to get back on the agenda, some further discussion of facilities. And I'm sure we'll do that.
Yes.
You know, and I think one of the things we all need to be thinking about is how we're going to. We've sort of done the committee structure, and the committee comes back to the board and gives a recommendation. I think we need to be thinking about if we want to do it the same way or if we want to do it a different way. Maybe a work session would be a good idea. I don't know, but I just as a thought would prefer that the board itself have more direct involvement as a group with turning over every rock and hearing everything we can. Not that we would meet 4 times a month, but I think we need more active involvement, and not just 1 or 2 of us.
I think one of the first steps ought to be, once we get that digested, there are a couple other pieces of data coming in, survey, report that we get together for a work session sometime,
January?
January, late January, whatever, when we can have that kind of discussion and figure out what's our course of action going to be. Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
I agree. Tracy, you agree? Sometime in January, anytime after January. All right. Okay, next up, Student Services. Betsy Ryan had issues come up. Yes. So, Ray?
Mrs. Ryan's dealing with the family matters I'm going to take this for. The administration of Turpin High School requests permission for the fast-pitch girls softball team, along with chaperones, to travel to Clarksville, Tennessee, April 3rd through 5th, 2014, to compete in the Play It Again Sports High School Softball Tournament. Cost per student is $150 to cover food, lodging, and tournament entry. District transportation will be utilized for the trip. Superintendent recommends the board approve the overnight field trip by the Turpin High School fast-pitch softball team to Clarksville, Tennessee in April of 2014.
Are we in consent agenda? Yeah. No.
No.
Okay. Second.
Discussion? Okay, Mr. Tepper?
Mrs. Huebner?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissinger?
Yes.
Mr. Fruman?
Yes.
Dr. Heiss?
Yes. Next up, curriculum. Dr. Jackson?
Yes, under the curriculum, you'll see a number of policies in regards, this is the second reading, and actually we had the first reading, and now I move to adopt the proposed new policies. And again, just as a quick reminder that these policies, all 25 plus of those have been, as Randy said, has been looked at and through the policy committee as well as Neola. These were primarily policies that through their normal fall update, although there was a lot of them, and many of them were in regards to new legislation. So I would recommend that the board approve the policies as presented.
So moved.
Second?
Mr. Tepper?
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissinger?
Yes.
Mr. Fruman?
Yes.
Mrs. Huebner?
Yes.
Dr. Heiss?
Yes. Next up, 9.2, textbook for grade 11 AP Language and Composition.
Yes, we would like a motion to approve the textbook for grade 11 AP Language and Composition. It's entitled The Language of Composition, Reading, Writing, and Rhetoric, and it has been on review in central office since October 28th.
Motion.
Second. Did you look at it, Ms. Tracy?
I saw that there, yes.
Okay.
I glanced through it briefly. I didn't read it as thoroughly as normal, but I did look through it.
Are you
But you're
slacking
aligned.
off a little bit?
I am. I've been a little busy lately.
But you're alive.
Tony's reading it.
Okay.
Tony took another read.
Mr. Tepper?
Mrs. Huebner?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissinger?
Yes.
Mr. Fruman?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Dr. Heiss?
Yes. Next up, our Human Resources Report. Tammy?
Good evening. In our Human Resources Report this evening, item A, retirement. Item B, we see 2 resignations. Item C, a supplemental contract resignation. Item D is a leave of absence to place Glenda Beard on an unpaid leave of absence. Change of assignment. Item F, change of salary, you see several there. Moving on to the next page, item G. These are continuing contracts for clerical and cook positions. Item H, which encompasses I, J, K, and L, and we say under I, appointments. Moving on to page 3, item J are special services appointments. Give you a moment to look at those. Moving on to page 4, item K, appointments and resignations of our consultants and coaches, as well as advisors. Item L, substitute personnel, and we see aide, cook, teacher, health aide, and secretary substitutes. Since the board meeting on October 28th, staffing in the district has increased 1.93 FTE, and this was due to the October bus route bid process. The staffing level now stands at 772.40 FTE. The superintendent recommends the board approve the Human Resources Report as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Mr. Tuffer?
Mrs. Bissinger?
Yes.
Mr. Fruman?
Yes.
Mrs. Hubner?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Dr. Heiss?
Yes.
Item M on the next page, these are our negotiated agreements and salary schedules, and I do apologize on the electronic version on Board Docs. Item 8 was inadvertently left off. We made some changes this afternoon and we left one off. However, I did provide you with a paper copy, and it should not cause any change in the agenda. It is on the agenda, just not as an attachment. At this point, I believe Dr. Jackson would like to speak about the negotiated agreements.
Absolutely, I would. First of all, I would like to thank all three of our organizations for a lot of hard work over a several-month period that had just been delayed on several occasions because of the state budget and because of insurances and the rates and all those types of things. But basically, I would like to share that it's been an ongoing process, and that I want to thank each of those organizations. We truly appreciate all the collaboration of our three organizations to get us to this point. With that said, that it is a 4-year contract, which really does play a big part in helping keep our district finances very stable as we move forward. The agreements have some modest increases in a 4-year contract, as we would expect. I can share a couple of those with you in regards to it's a 1% merit increase across the board. It's the first time that we have a consumer-driven, high-deductible health care plan that we'll be offering for our staff, which should be a benefit to not only them in their choices for insurance coverage, but also as the district as well. In the teacher contract, it basically has a high-quality teacher evaluation model based on the Ohio Standards for Teaching Professions. So that is also included in that. And again, I just want to thank all three of our organizations for a lot of hard work, and I'm glad that we're here at this point and that we can move forward. Rick, and you can share a little bit more that this agreement, and I won't take a lot of the thunder, but that also we promised at our last operating levy that the funds that we would get from that would carry our district for 3 additional years. And even with this agreement, the way we had negotiated it is we've actually increased it to a 4th year. Rick?
No, I mean, that was a kind of a guiding principle throughout, was to try to keep that commitment and live within our means with the state budget and so forth that we knew. And I'll echo, what Dow said, is a lot of variables this time moving. Both the state budget and healthcare were both big variables, and took a lot of time to absorb the impact. And like I said, from sitting at the table, we had some real good, collaboration, and obviously these are challenging things that we're talking about when it comes to, financial matters of the district, and at no time was it ever, not something we wanted to take care of our people. We've done that, and I think we remain competitive with these agreements, and we appreciate the real collaboration and willingness to come together for, I don't know we've ever had a 4-year agreement here, and it gives us, some time to, as Dow said, to have some stability and move forward. So.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, and in this, you do see items 1 through 13. These are our various negotiated agreements. For OPSEs 177 and 273, this is a 4-year agreement from 2013 to 2017. For FHTA, we actually had a reopener this year, so there's a 1-year agreement on the reopener, and then a contract from 2014 to 2017. We also see administrator, exempt, other support staff, print shop, home instructor, that's a very long one there, number 12, and then our substitute operational staff salary schedules 2013 to 17.
One thing to add to that too is that obviously we have 3 negotiated agreements, but we also have exempt salary schedules and administrative salary schedules, and like I said, this was truly a group effort all the way around, and we believe all of our groups are competitive, and although those weren't bargained, we worked really hard with those groups to keep them comparable and competitive at the same time.
The superintendent recommends that the board approve the negotiated agreements and salary schedules as indicated.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
because I do a lot of this work for a living, I'm always amazed, and particularly extra amazed this time, at the professionalism and the passion and the collaboration. We don't sit on the negotiating team as a board, but we're involved a lot in discussions with our team, and it's just really, really good. A lot of hard work. And I also want to thank Dallas, Tammy, and Rick especially for the administrator. And Ray. For
And Betsy.
And Betsy for the administrator contracts too, or not contracts, but the recommendations. So, thank you.
Yeah, I echo that. I spent some time reviewing this stuff. There's a lot of paper here. You guys just really did nice work. Thank you.
You know, it's interesting, there are a lot of school districts who don't work well together, don't plan far out in advance, and bad things happen there. But I'd like to think that the investment in time and effort and working together will pay dividends. It's a win-win-win going down the road. Win for the students, the folks that work here, our education professionals, and our taxpayers. So, again, thanks for the hard work. And I echo what you
Julie.
said.
I said Julie.
Oh, yeah. What Julie said about the thought and discussion that went through when we do meet with our team, because there was diversity of thought, and we came to consensus, and I think that was good. So, thank you.
All right, well, thank you very much. Can I get a vote?
Mr. Fruman?
Oh, yeah,
Yes.
Mrs. Bissinger?
Yes.
Mrs. Huebner?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Dr. Heiss?
Yes. Now we come to the part, our consent agenda. Starting off is Ray.
I've got a change order for Anderson High School. There's a motion before the board for the change order submitted by Blau Mechanical in the amount of a negative $1,296.31.
Okay, next, thank you. Treasurer, a modified tax budget, 2014-15.
These are items 12.1 through 12.7. First item is just asking the board to adopt a resolution to allow us to include the 5-year forecast in our tax budget, which is what most, if not all, districts in Hamilton County are doing. So it's recommended the board adopt the resolution requesting authority from the Hamilton County Budget Commission to file a modified tax budget for this year, and we've done this for many years. 12.2 is kind of an outline of the tax budget calendar, showing the dates when the tax budget will be on display, when a notice will appear in the paper, as well as the date of organizational meeting, which was discussed earlier. So it's recommended the board approve the 14-15 budget calendar as outlined in items 12.2. Item 12.3, we were asking the board to approve a revision to the board-approved ING 403B plan document. This was originally approved back in December of '08. There's been a couple of addendums since then, but the IRS has changed a couple of provisions, and we're recommending the board adopt the resolution to amend the 403B plan document, which is also presented in the agenda in item 12.3. The next two are workers' compensation items, self-insured workers' compensation items. First is 12.4. We're asking the board to approve excess workers' compensation, which is required with State National Insurance Company through Berry Insurance Group. We're doing two things with 12.4 and 12.5. We're moving those, we started, if you remember, back in December, and we're moving those to 13-month agreements to get them on a calendar, which is really an industry standards calendar, year, I should say. Challenging year in workers' comp across the United States, and we were fortunate to be able to at least secure a rate that we felt was competitive and one that we, due to a challenging market, our loss ratios were excellent, which we were still able to secure a quality rate. So we're recommending the board approve the excess workers' compensation insurance with State National Insurance Company through Berry Insurance Group, effective 12/1 of 13 through January 1 of 15, and that premium is $38,016. I will mention Greg Rudolph, our partner from Berry Insurance Group, is here, and he's been great to work with, and just so you could put a name with a face, he's the guy that keeps us, from a risk standpoint, out of trouble. So we value him. He's from our community, and we value his partnership. So, item 12.5, we're asking the board to approve the renewal of our service agreement with Sedgwick Claims Management Services, as well as approve an unemployment compensation services agreement with Comp Management. These also will be 13-month agreements, December through the end of next December. In both cases, we were able to negotiate reductions. The claims management was a 12.3% reduction in fees, and our unemployment agreement was a 3.1% reduction in fees. So recommending the board approve the service agreement for administration of claims with Sedgwick Claims Management Services, Inc., and approve the unemployment compensation services agency agreement with Comp Management, Inc. And one, to kind of put it all together, there's a lot of moving parts with that. When we took that on ourselves, we had need some additional partners, whether it was excess and claims management. And in the last year, it's estimated that we've saved $160,555, or 43.64%. I think last year was about $210,000. This year's $160,000 by taking on that challenge ourselves, which obviously lets us do some other things in the district. But I think it's important to note we took on some risk and responsibility, and obviously with a lot of work done throughout the district, Ray, and keeping our facilities safe and keeping our employees safe obviously turns into dollars saved. So we're very pleased about that. In 12.6, we're recommending custom design benefits be renewed as our plan administrator for our Section 125 flexible spending account. This will be effective January of 14. There's once again a couple of changes that were recently added through the IRS, and those are part of this. So it's recommended the board approve the custom design benefits flexible benefits plan effective January 1st of 14. And those are reports. So now the actual report of the treasurer. In item A, we have our donations. Large Elsie Minnick scholarship of $5,000 of note in October. In item B, we have the statement of board accounts. No issues to report there. Item C, we have our summary of general fund receipts. Our revenue pattern is on target as projected, with no major issues there. Item D and E are our expenditure patterns, and we're in line with our 3-year average of spending at this time of the year. Our monthly bank reconciliations is item F. In G, our list of investments. In H, we got a little activity here, but a lot of it is related to our bond retirement and our refinancing, so we have a large increase in the appropriations, and it's reflected in the activity as bonds were sold and revenue was received. In item I, we're requesting approval of a new district support organization, the Anderson High School Chorus Pictures, who I think their sponsor, Pam Moon, is here, and she's done a lot of hard work to get that organization ready, all the tax paperwork to get that organization ready to be classified as one of our support organizations. In item J, we're requesting transfers from last year's federal funds to this year's federal funds as required. And all that is recommended the board approve items 11.1 through 12.7 as presented.
Just for the record, I would like to point out once again that on our investment report, on $1.5 million of investment, our total interest,
Good.
$26.75. Mr. Tepper.
Mrs. Huebner? Mr. Fruman?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissinger?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Dr. Heiss?
Yes.
Thank you.
Now on to the reports for the Board of Education. First, our Forest Hill Foundation report.
Thank you. I attended the meeting on November 13th. The first discussion was the Distinguished Alumni event. And looking around the room, actually, I think a lot of people here were at that event. It was wonderful. For a first inaugural Distinguished Alumni event, it was exceptionally well attended, and it was just a really great event. For those of you that were there, you know that, and for those of you that didn't make it, go next year. It was really super. It really was. So kudos to the foundation for that event. It was excellent. We heard from the various teams on the community outreach team. Beth Davis is once again, and Jenny Nyack are getting together the Forest Hills 5K. You know, I didn't write down the date. It's some Saturday in May, usually mid-May, thereabouts. I'll have it for you next time. But they're getting that planned again. The Raise and Manage Funds team, most significantly, they're kicking off the annual campaign. They're going to do that primarily through email and personal contact. Their goal is $100,000. There's a beautiful brochure. It tells a lot about the foundation, the mission, the various programs. And for those of you that aren't particularly familiar with the foundation, they've got the college prep ACT classes, GSAT, SAT, Destination Imagination, which is a district program, but is funded in part by the foundation. The after-school access and enrichment, or what we also call 24/7, and the Power Up Equity program. So be on the lookout for your brochure, and if you can help out the foundation, please do so. And then the last thing to report is the foundation is working on, in fact, did adopt a new mission and vision statement. It's not substantially different than what was there before. I would tell you it's probably a little bit more inspirational and aspirational. And that's the report.
I do have the date for the 5K. It's Saturday, May 10th, which is a week earlier than it has been the past several years. So Forest Hill 5K, May 10th.
All right, next up, legislative liaison report.
I want to comment on the 3 bills that are active. One of them is House Bill 264. That was the diabetes bill. Apparently there's not going to be any action taken on that. I think it was up for, I think it was the House committee where they were taking testimony. But after talking with Mrs. Huebner, I have a little bit different perspective on that bill now. Although we frequently look at bills that require the district to do things, spend money, take training as unfunded mandates. This bill and this subject, as with many others, there's a balance there. But nevertheless, they are not going to be taking testimony, and so I'm not sure where that bill is right now, but I think they're in the process of modifying it slightly to make it just a little bit more balanced for school districts to be able to implement. The second one is House Bill 193. This is a bill that will have impact on the school district. It seeks to mitigate some of the things that will be put on the school districts because of the Common Core and some of the things that come along with that. Apparently it's a good bill. It will help us out, and for a school district like Forest Hills, it will be a good thing for us in the long run. The last bill I was going to talk about was House Bill 237. That's a bill that was submitted to essentially completely negate the Common Core in Ohio. And after hearing from the House Committee Chair on Education and the Senate Committee Chair on Education at a conference last weekend, apparently that bill is going nowhere. I was able to learn a lot more about the Common Core because I think that's been a topic of discussion, and we get a lot of questions on that, and I know the campaign trail was brought up frequently. And after talking with some people from ODE, and I actually was able to talk with Colleen Grady one-on-one, who's the majority policy advisor in the House, I have a lot more confidence that it's not as restrictive and scary as a lot of people may think. One of the things that she shared with me is that in Ohio Revised Code right now, it's law when they're talking about the Common Core and academic standards in the state of Ohio, Nothing, and I'm quoting, "Nothing in this section requires any school district to utilize all or any part of a model curriculum developed under this section." She pointed out to me that it was more on academic outcomes rather than curriculum. So that's my report. If anybody has any questions. There's a lot of things going on in education, but those I thought were the hot ones right now. Or Dallas, if you'd like to add anything. Okay.
No,
Next up, our safety committee report.
Thank you. The Safety Committee met on September the 25th, and the highlighted topics were, Steve Seaver spoke for Anderson Township and told us that there were signage improvements around all the schools. The Salem Road improvements are done. There's better turning capability on Elnetta. Elnetta leads directly to Maddox, so that's a good improvement. I drive by there all the time, so I can attest. They will be working on the next areas between Newtown to Berkshire on Clough. We met in the Emergency Operations Center, which if you ever have a chance to, you can't get in there without like an armed guard practically, but if you ever have the chance to go down in the bottom part of the Anderson Government Center, it's in the bottom of the Anderson Government Center, and they refer to it as the bunker. They get about 4,000 calls a year for things out of the norm. It's set up to immediately function in the event of an emergency. 100% of the building is under generator power, and the center downstairs is used for training meetings and other things too, so it's not just in the event of emergencies. The district, in addition to having the District Safety Committee, which consists of about 45 people and meets 3 times a year, also has a district core team of about 8 to 10 people who meet once a month. Their goal is to deal with the day-to-day planning and correspondence to the district concerning safety. Things that they deal with are the crisis response team, the ALICE training, the school resource officer's role, restraint policy, building drills, safety plans, health issues, and dog searches. And Phil asked me to let you know, and I think Dallas already said this, that the ALICE training is now this week in the phase of the high school kids. It's at the kid level. So, sorry, I'm tired. The 2 high schools and Nagel will be having presentations in homeroom and discussions throughout the day in classes as well. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Saga report.
I don't think anybody attended in November, but Randy is attending on December 10th.
That's correct.
So he will have an update for the December meeting.
I think it was just last Tuesday. We don't have the minutes.
Actually, I think Phil attended for the district, didn't he? Still here?
He wasn't.
Phil was at the Saga meeting.
Okay, great. And he's not here, so we will wait till next month. Okay.
No executive session.
We have no executive session, so before we adjourn, we're adjourning now 20 minutes to 8, which gives everyone plenty of time to get started on their training for the Forest Hills 5K on May 10th. Our next regular meeting of the Board of Education is December 16th, 2013. I appreciate everyone coming, and we'll see you next month. A motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Tepfer?
Mr. Fruman?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissinger?
Yes.
Mrs. Hubner? Dr. Height?
Yes. Thank you.
I must have a louder voice.
Never